Hi, we're going to get started in about a minute. Just get yourself settled and we'll do introductions, like I said, in just a couple minutes.
We'll just listen on yours anyway.
What's going on here? Come on, like you said, you do everything. Make it happen.
I don't know.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Wayside Women's Services ECHO session for today. My name is Rebecca Buller, and I'm the Education and Prevention Manager here at Wayside, and we're excited to have you all with us. Our topic today is working with clients with traumatic brain injuries, and Molly Gilbert will be sharing information about, this is Molly, we'd love to zoom in so you could see us better, but we're having a little technology problem, so you're gonna just have to live with us off in the distance. So what we'll do is we'll start today and we'll try to do introductions, and I'm gonna call on you and hopefully you could unmute and let us know who you are and where you're affiliated with, or if you're a student, which student, where you're going to school or whatever that is, internship. And if for some reason you don't have audio or we don't have a lot of pictures going here, I don't know where all your cameras are, but you can also type that information into our chat. It's really important for us to know everyone who's here. So if there are multiple people in the room with you, make sure we get their names and emails in the chat, because at some point you may want continuing education, and it is approved by the boards of behavioral health, social work, and marriage and family therapy. So with that, I'm going to start with Rick, because I know he doesn't have a mic, and he's already introduced himself in the chat. Rick Moldenauer is here with us, and he says, yo, he's a DHS and a frequent ECHO participant. Let's go to Todd Johnston. Todd, can you unmute and introduce yourself? Can you see? All right, Todd, if you are able, go ahead. Let's see, we've got Kathleen. Hey, all, I'm here. Katie's here. She's a peer recovery specialist at Women's Treatment. That's Katie Bergman, I think, at Family. And then no, it's not. It's a different Katie.
It's Katie.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
She's like,
all right. Hey, Katie Berg. I'm sorry. Let's see. Let's go to Deb.
Hi, everyone. This is Deb Morrison with Homeland Security Investigations Victim Assistance Program.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks for joining us. How about Sheila?
Hi, it's Sheila Fontaine with the Public Defender's Office in the 9th District.
Thank you and welcome. Andrea?
Andreas. Yeah. I don't think Andrea has a mic.
Okay, well, Andrea, welcome.
Andrew's a peer at Wayside.
Oh,
And Hillary. Hillary, can you unmute and introduce yourself? Hillary Ashford?
Did it work? Did it work?
There we
Hello?
go. We can hear you.
Perfect. Let's see here. Yes, Hillary Ashford, currently working as a peer support specialist at Community Behavioral Health Hospital in Rochester, Minnesota. Yes, so thanks.
Yeah, welcome.
Great.
I'm glad you're here. And it looks like a Ryan T. We only see a icon. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Tebow. I'm a peer recovery specialist, and right now I'm kind of training at Wayside's different locations, and eventually I'll be stationed at the, what is it called? I'm having a brain fart, at the Community Resource Center.
Oh, yes. Wonderful. Let's see. Who do I not have? Who's our, let's see. DJ.
Deborah.
I did that. And Lucia. I think that's it for right now. If I've missed someone, say something in the chat. But I want to let you know that today Molly's asked that since she has lots to cover, if you could hold your questions or type them into the chat, we'll take them at the end so we make sure we get through everything. We did email a number of handouts, and you have them all in your inbox. If you haven't printed them out, you'll know how to get back to them now. And Molly will probably refer to them. She probably won't show all of them, but know that you have them and can refer to them later. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Molly and let her introduce herself and the work that Vinland's doing.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks Wayside for making all this happen. This is super cool. I will say that I'm a little nervous because I'm not used to being in front of the cameras, but I'll just pretend you're all here, and maybe it'll go well. So I'll just get going here. Just a little bit about me. I did spend most of my career in higher education. So I was running admissions offices, and then I was also working for about 8 years down at Shattuck St. Mary's. It's a boarding school down in Faribault. And I like to say I was recruiting the most talented hockey players, musicians, and minds, not necessarily simultaneously. But I did want to give back in a deeper way. I've 38 years now of long-term sobriety, so I began representing different treatment centers around the country. And so when I got with Vinland, we really started to focus locally in the state of Minnesota, just because of what's happening with insurances around the United States right now. We used to serve a lot more people out of state, but they would get, we'd get the, oh, sure, we'll okay you for 48 hours from New York City, and then you need to call back and beg, and we just didn't have the resources to do it. So we've started to focus a lot more locally within the state of Minnesota. And so we're going around to physicians and hospitals and different clinics and veterans courts and treatment courts and giving this presentation. So it seems to be helpful. These are just some of the great places that I was. That one right there that just came up was the University of Leningrad. I was there well after Mr. Putin, so I'm still alive and well. That's a good thing. So on to the important stuff. Vinland, this is such a cool story. We were a gift from the Kingdom of Norway. There's a place over in Vinland called Beitostølen that still exists, and it is famous for helping people have full lives with disabilities. That's where our tagline comes from. And they're still in existence, and what they do is they help people that have lost limbs mostly, so that were very athletic. So you had a tennis player that used to, really, really be good and lost an arm. And so working with that prosthetic, how do they get back to that life and that, that activity that they love? Same thing with a lot of downhill skiers and that kind of thing. So they came over to the United States in the 70s. I think it was 1976. And this is an actual picture of Crown Prince Harold giving a check to Gerald Ford in the White House at the Rose Garden for $200,000 and said, we want you to start a Beitostølen in America. And because Minnesota probably has the greatest concentration of Norwegians, and we also had people like Humphrey involved in our legislative process, and we had some real heavy hitters that were lobbying to have it be in the state of Minnesota. So we got it in Minnesota. And we bought Vinland, which was at that time, if you see the dark roof there, it was a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom house with 6 garage stalls. It's the section, I don't know if I can I highlight?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that?
Yep.
So it was like this to this right here. And then 6 garage stalls and 180 acres lakefront. And so they bought it outright for $200,000, which is amazing. So there's no debt, and it's a nonprofit. So that's kind of the way you want to go if you can. So obviously we've expanded since then. And as you can see, you've got little shaved in or mowed in tracks all the way throughout the 180 acres. The clients can go all the way down to the lake. And then this is our little chalet down here. It looks tiny, but if you look at the pontoon boat right here, you can see that it's actually quite large. And we do a lot of things down at the chalet, including we just had Bright County come on down and have a day where they could have their, I don't know what they call those, their little retreats, day-long retreats. And you can do that. You can certainly contact me if you're interested. We'll provide you with coffee and water, and you guys bring in your own potluck, and it's a great way to do it. Just do it not now. Do it when we can give you a ride on the pontoon boat. And then just right down the road here, the dirt road we share, right over across the screen here is Camp Idahoppy. Some of you might know of that, YMCA camp. So it's just a lovely area. The main thing to tell you guys is that we're 9 miles west of Wayzata on Highway 12. So it's right on Lake Independence in the Three Rivers District area, if you know where that is. It just looks so remote. We have to kind of focus on that. So as you may or may not know, we switched over our focus from the Beta Stollen of America, where we were serving a lot of veterans and again, focusing on the physical rehabilitation. We switched over in 1990 because what we saw was that out of all the people that were coming to Vinland that had brain injuries, 100% of them had substance use disorder issues. And I think, back in the day, somebody kind of went ding, ding, ding. Nobody's taking care of these folks. There's plenty of people that are taking care of folks with physical disabilities. And we went back to Norway and said, are you okay if we do this? And they were like, absolutely, let's serve where we can serve. And so we switched our focus over to SUD then in 1990. Of course, the integrated, mind, body, effect and all the, taking into account the physical as well as a substance use disorder work was a real big deal back then. Now, many of us are doing it in the field, but back then we were certainly one of the first to do it. And so we've got a very large physical exercise center where we have 2 exercise physiologists working with them, and I'll go over that a little bit later, but we're pretty famous for that. So we just kind of showed you the main campus in Loretto. We also have an outpatient services over in Northeast Minneapolis, Broadway and Stinson area, and it's right on the bus line. And just kind of a heads up, because some of you might have some questions coming up later about, how do we get our clients in? There's a wait list, this and that. Just so you know, the outpatient really is a lot more open to what they can work with. Because, it kind of common sense, but if you get somebody in the milieu that is very disruptive and needs a lot more one-on-one, in a living situation, it becomes very different than an outpatient situation where you can deal with them on a day-by-day basis and not have the living situation. So just so you know, they can get you in within 24 hours over at the outpatient facility. So just a couple pictures again, because I think this is helpful. This is the back of the building of the new construction that we put on back in 2015. And it was originally meant to house just the women over here. This is the lodging part. So there are 24 beds over there that were originally for women. Sadly, there is such a demand for both men and women, but the demand was so much greater for men that we took the bottom 12 beds and gave them to men, and the top 12 beds are for women. So we've got 61 beds, only 12 of them are for women. So that will be something that you'll hear as a theme coming through when it comes to getting clients in that are female. There's usually a longer wait list because of only the 12 beds. But of course, according to state law, if they're if they're IV users or they're pregnant, they hop right to the top of the list. So, and it can really, really vary. We'll have admissions say, oh my God, it's going to be 3 months before we get anybody in because you've got a list this long, people are waiting to get in. And as we all know, you try to pick up the phone and call somebody that's an active addiction and say, okay, I know you called a week ago and you're ready for treatment. And you try to get a hold of, the phones are no longer in order. They don't have minutes anymore. They've changed their mind. They've gotten better, all those things. So that wait list goes to this within, 4 hours. So I always try to, I'll put my contact information at the end here too. I just really try to encourage people to pick up and give a call and just really be an advocate for your client. If this is really a fit for them, and I can certainly help with that process if you have issues. The picture on the top there is the dining hall. We too have a CEU. I only do one a year because I can only handle the stress of once a year. So I do one a year CEU event, and it's usually clinicians from Vinland in the fall. So if you want to be on our mailing list for that, you can certainly contact me and I can get you on that. We can fit 100 people and we sell out every year. So it's a popular event, and it's a great opportunity to come and actually be and see and feel the place and get tours and see clients and all that kind of good stuff. So the living room area here is where people come in and wait as they're being, as they intake. And I took a picture with my phone. It's kind of lame, but it's a picture of one of the rooms. And there's actually 2 beds, one on either side. And that door there is a bathroom that they share. So you've got 2 people on either side of that bathroom that share. It's an ADA bathroom, wheelchairs. We have a lot of folks in wheelchairs and stuff. But it's kind of neat because what you don't, and there's the bathroom right here. But what you don't see is that they've got like a little sink in their room and makeup area and closets in it. So it doesn't junk up the bathroom, which is kind of nice. So just to give you a little feel for the place. Outpatient services over in Northeast Minneapolis. Again, working with those with cognitive impairments and other issues. Some of the questions we have is, do you have to have a brain injury to go to Vinland, either residential or outpatient? And the answer is no. But what you do need to have is some sort of cognitive issue happening. So you really need it to be slower, a little more repetitive, gentler. We have a lot of trauma, folks with a lot of trauma with us. And, that gentle approach really seems to help folks that are really overwhelmed, sensory overwhelmed, just life overwhelmed. And, I like to say, if you've got somebody operating at an average speed, even with a brain injury, but if they're able to read and keep up with a lot of assignments and do all that, they would probably be a little bored. So we really kind of look for somebody that's, either got a learning disability or that because of their brain injury, they have problems processing, or because of the trauma, they're not able to focus as well. So that's why we focus on working with people with severe and persistent mental illness, PTSD, folks on the spectrum. But you don't have to have a brain injury, but you do need to have something cognitively happening. So hopefully that helps a little bit there. And then at outpatient, of course, they can work with more than we would probably work with at residential just because of the living situation. One of the kind of cool things they offer at outpatient is something called the BIG group. It's a brain injury recovery support group that is run by somebody that has a brain injury and has navigated this whole process. It's not a recovery treatment or 12-step group. It is just for those that have had some sort of brain injury and for their families, friends, loved ones to come with them. And you'll often find, parents, loved ones coming in saying, what has happened to my loved one? They are not the same person that they were before. And how do I cope? What do I do? What kind of resources are available to me? That's a wonderful group. We offer it at Vinland. It's not us. We just offer our space. So they take up our space once a month on a Saturday at outpatient. And then there's another one that takes place at the Wedge on what's Food Street? Nicollet on Nicollet Avenue at the Wedge table. That's a lot more social, a lot more loud. So, you know, be aware of that as if you have clients that might be interested in something or families that might be interested in something like this, but it's just nice to know that it's there. Yeah. So the latest thing that we just started offering that we like to tell people about is problem gambling treatment over at outpatient. Now, we do, for our substance abuse treatment, we do require the cognitive issue to be happening, but for the gambling, we don't. What we found is that as a co-occurring or as a transfer addiction, I'm not a clinician, I'm sorry if I'm not using the right words, but we find that our clients, at least half of our clients have gambling issues. And so it's also the number one cause, the number one addiction for suicide. If you can imagine, you know, you've got people that, you know, have gone through their significant other's IRA and their significant other doesn't know about it yet. And you've got people that are after your kneecaps, you know, and you're driving home and it's dawn and you've been doing this all night and you haven't caught up your losses, which you rarely do. Do you know, are you going to take a sharp left over that bridge or are you going to go home and face all the consequences? It's really brutal. And there's just not a lot of knowledge out there about it. And so we decided we're going to do this. And the really cool thing about it is the state of Minnesota most often will pay for it. So it's actually the lottery that pays for it if insurance won't. So we can get clients set up for that. If you have questions about it, we also do the Rule 82s, often known as a gambling assessment there. And a lot of times probation officers have a hard time finding a place that will conduct the assessments for gambling, and we'll do them there. Okay. On to the presentation. So 3.2 million in the US living with disabilities as a result of a brain injury. Quarter of the stays that are adults in community hospitals involve mental health issues or substance use disorders. Obviously, we know the money spent on treatment saves society money from reduced healthcare and crime and increased productivity, and that's according to SAMHSA. And the financial cost of drug and alcohol abuse in the U.S. Is estimated at $180 billion annually. And that's a stat that's about 5 years old. So I'm assuming it's much greater than that now. Traumatic injury is considered the silent epidemic. Because if you're dealing with somebody that doesn't have a shaved head and a scar that you can see, you're not going to know, right? So unless somebody is forward about it and says, hey, I have this, I've been diagnosed with this, or I had a car accident and, you know, I believe that I have a traumatic brain injury, because so many people do not get properly diagnosed. Why? Because they don't go in afterwards, right? If you think about the times that, you know, you've gone out, I'll just say you, not me, and decided to pick up, you know, single rollerblading at age 40 and you hit a tree and you wake up on the, on the boulevard with two people standing over you, just saying, you know, shake it off is what we've been told, right? You just shake it off. Or if you're in sports and you get a concussion, shake it off. Now, sports are getting better, but still it is happening. You know, successive concussions is considered a traumatic brain injury. You know, and it depends on a lot of things, you know, length of time that you were knocked out, et cetera, but it is amazing the amount of people that are walking around with traumatic brain injury. And as I tell this, I question whether I might have had a traumatic brain injury as well, you know, because we've all had those times when we've been knocked out or we've had a problem finding our words. And, you know, there's certain things that go around and we never went in, you know. So that is the majority of our folks. So they don't come in with a straight diagnosis that says, oh, my doctor says I have a traumatic brain injury. And so many folks, when they're going into prison or jails, do not want to consider, or they don't want to seem like they're vulnerable. And so they won't self-admit, right? It makes perfect sense. So a lot of times the people that are working with the folks that have traumatic brain injuries don't know it until they start to realize this person isn't tracking. You know, we've given them assignments at, you know, they're at a mainstream treatment center and they've had 4 assignments and they haven't filled out one yet. And they just keep making excuses for it. Well, they're probably not saying, I have a problem reading, or I can't remember, I have a memory issue, or I have a problem writing and I'm embarrassed about it, so I'm not going to tell anybody. So that's why on average, we don't see people at Vinland until their 7th treatment. And you try to treat somebody once, the first time in treatment, and it's tough. But after they've been through 7 treatments, you try to, kind of tease apart all that they've learned and unlearned, and it's a challenge. So we want to stop being the last resort place and start getting in front of, identifying that this is a person that would be a fit. Because when we get them the first or second time, we have a greater success rate. Everybody does, So we're really trying, that's why we're going out and doing this and just trying to get in front of it and educate folks on what they might be working with and ways to hopefully recognize that you might be working with somebody with a TBI. Okay, I think it's all in here. So after sustaining an injury, many people experience those devastating physical, emotional, behavior changes. Our folks often struggle with depression, poor impulse control, memory issues, which I mentioned, just a few reasons for the increased incidence of substance abuse. So you think about it, we don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg oftentimes when people come into us. So did they have high risk-taking behavior because they were an addict and, they were involved in high-risk car chases and, I don't know, they're just adrenaline junkies. They're jumping out of airplanes. Who knows, And then did they get the injury, or were they just a normal person going on in their daily life, get the brain injury, and then say, oh my God, this is not my life anymore. And then pick up and start, doing drugs and alcohol. We really don't know. We see so much of both. But it's very, very common that people will pick up after the brain injury and say, I can't cope. I'm just going to obliterate. So I kind of mentioned this a little bit. The conventional success is not great for folks that don't have that one-on-one and that real accommodation for that individual learning style. We've got, for our clinicians, they have 6 to 7 people on their caseload. So that means it's an awful lot of one-on-one and really meeting people where they're at. We do groups as well, but again, you're going to kind of figure out who goes in what group. You have groups that are faster paced, and then you have groups that are a little slower paced. You kind of figure out who should be where, but a lot of one-on-one. It's just really necessary for this group. The estimation is 1 out of 2 people living with a brain injury has substance abuse. That's according to the Department of Health and Human Services. Office of Disability, which is 5 times higher than the general population. Again, these stats are 5 years old. From what we see, it's a lot greater. There's some recent studies that have been done in the prison population that indicate that about 90% of folks in there have some sort of TBI. Again, varying disability levels, but it's a huge number, because if you think about all the drug deals gone wrong, the bats over the head, the pipes over the head, and with women, it's domestic violence. So the assailant is going for the neck and above. So it's just so many folks out there that are suffering from the after effects of a TBI that may not even recognize it. So it really comes down to the social workers and the probation officers and the folks that are working, the peer recovery support people that are working with these folks to help them identify. And there's some really basic things you can do. And I don't know that I included this, but there's a test that it's called an ACEs, and it's not the Advanced Childhood Experience, or the, what is it? Adverse. Sorry, it's not that one. It's called the Advanced Concussion, or I'll send a link later. Mm-hmm. It's the Advanced Concussion Evaluation, I think it is, but it's from the government. 1-page form. It's a PDF you can download, and it asks the basic questions. And really the questions are, have you ever been knocked out, knocked unconscious, and if so, for how long? Usually if it's over the period of 5 minutes, you start to get some damage happening. Has this happened more than once? Have you had, how many concussions have you had? Did you have a hospital stay involved with it? And have you noticed any effects afterwards? Have you noticed speech impediments, memory, some of those issues? That's all you need to know. I mean, we don't need to have, the full neuropsych evaluation to know what part of the brain was it a coup, contra coup, we don't need to know that. We need to know from the client, what are the effects that you are seeing? And, how can we help work around this with you? So that's really key. And a lot of people think that, this has to be all documented up, and it doesn't. It really helps if you're just aware of some of the effects of a brain injury to help the person out. So yeah, those that are incarcerated are seen a lot. So just to give you an example of the prevalence, there was an assessment done in an outpatient mental health center in Washington, D.C. They had 295 people enrolled, as you can see. And out of all those folks, 80% of them screened positive for TBI. And these are just, a wide variety of folks. 25% reported at least one moderate or severe. It was all associated with current alcohol use and psychiatric symptom severity, lifetime institutionalization, homelessness, more common among participants with PTSD, borderline personality, and antisocial. It's interesting because our psychologist told me the other day that the amount of people we see coming in diagnosed as bipolar, he said, is often wrong. And we have to spend a lot of time teasing apart that diagnosis. And the reason is, if you think of the folks that are coming in for us, a lot of folks don't have insurance. They've been living under a bridge. Maybe when they're going in to see medical care, it's for emergency room only. So how many different ER docs have they seen that have given them different diagnoses? A lot of times the TBIs look very similar to borderline. So that dysregulation of emotion, the outbursts, just all of the symptoms are so similar. And so when they come into us, we have to do a lot of sort of teasing apart, if you will. But it is very common that they will also have borderline. So that just kind of shows you, 80% of the people off the street are screening positive for TBI. That's pretty intense. And when was this done? That was 2017. Hey, we're getting up to date here. So this may surprise some people. 3 leading causes of TBI. The number 1 cause is falls. And I hope you remember this presentation the next time you get up on a ladder like I do. Have that phone with you. If you're alone and you're getting up on a ladder, seriously, it is the leading cause of traumatic brain injuries. Counts for 47% of all TBI-related visits, hospitalizations, and deaths. Number 2 is being struck by or against an object. Like I mentioned, the drug deal's gone wrong. Also for the folks in the military, I don't know what the technical term is called, but the blast bounce that happens. Concussive something or other.
Yeah.
That is very typical for our folks coming in when they're talking about being struck by or against an object. And then number 3 is motor vehicle accidents. I always thought motor vehicle would be number 1, so I was surprised at that. So this is one of the handouts I have for you guys. And I'm focusing on the criminal justice system because it is so huge and there's so many studies that have recently come out. There was one that went out to the state public defenders to try to educate them on the fact that they are dealing most often with folks with TBIs, and they better, get up to speed on how to support them, because so many of our folks will waive Miranda rights because they're overwhelmed, waive the white, they'll sign things just because they think they can get out of the room, that kind of thing. So it's really, really an issue. It's a vulnerable population. We need to be aware of it. So that little piece there is nice for you to have. It's nice for you to give to a client that might have to be represented by someone, have them give it to their attorney or their probation officer or, whoever they're with, because it really is something that needs to get out there. This handout is what mental health professionals need to know. I really like it because it's very simple, but it talks about things that we need to be aware of. And I don't know if I have it here in front of me. I'm just going to go look really quick because I was just going to go over a couple things here. That's the TBI. Let me just look real quick. I'm sorry for the. Yep, there it is. Okay. So things like, well, of course, understanding it, but exploring how they may have affected the individual in their personal and professional life. Are they aware their life has been affected by TBI? What's their relationship like with family and friends? Has it changed? If so, how? The TBI can lead to, of course, medication non-compliance, failure to keep appointments. This is why, so many people are getting put in jail that probably don't need to be. And this is why we focus on presenting to courts, because you've got somebody with a memory issue that has a court date next Monday at 8:00, and they know that on Friday, but on Monday they forget. So, the things that courts can do, like pick up the phone, maybe pick up the phone at 6 a.m. on Monday if there's anybody in, to say, hey, remember you've got court today. Or, if there's anyone that can do it 24 hours in advance, just a reminder, you've got court. Little sticky notes are huge. Give them a sticky note that says, you got this appointment, and I want you to put it on your mirror or on your fridge or somewhere you will see it, where it's visible to you. That will really help a client show up. So, again, this is why everybody that's working with folks that are in the criminal justice system need to know some of the side effects of a brain injury, because we're locking these folks up because they're forgetting that they've got a court date many, many times. And so the courts are just as interested in keeping people out of jail as anyone else. And so it's great when we're able to present this and they're able to go, oh, wow, maybe we can dedicate somebody to just make a phone call 24 hours in advance. And, that might really help. And maybe we can invest in sticky notes, little things like that can really make a big difference in these folks' lives. So this little piece kind of helps. It talks about aggression and impulsivity. We had somebody the other day, I was on the phone, I'm the outreach person. So I'm on the phone with, a family member, talking to them, from another state about how wonderful Vinland is. And I've got a client right outside my door dropping the F-bomb left and right, as happens in some treatment centers. And, he's just upset about something. And I had to say, excuse me one moment, and put that person on hold, go out in the hallway and go, Paul, fake name, Paul, you can't speak this loudly and swear this way, because I'm on the phone right now with somebody telling them how great this place is, and you know how great this place is, but you're really ticked off right now. So they're not going to believe it's a really great place if they're hearing you in the background. So can you please just take it into your counselor's office? Or, and he was like, oh, sorry, I didn't know you could hear me. That non-awareness of other people hearing and other people being there, really typical for TBI. So now if I would have finished that phone call, hung up, and 15 minutes later went to Paul and said, hey, when you were out in the hallway, he would have gotten, I would have gotten a wide variety of responses. Rage, paranoia. What are you talking about? I don't remember doing that. I didn't do it. So you really have to stop it in the moment. And, again, that's what one of these handouts will talk about. It's just really neat stuff to have when you're working with these folks. So some of the psychosocial effects and changes that can be seen with TBIs are listed here. Again, social inappropriateness, that inability to recognize that they're right in your face. It can be kind of hard too. That happens a lot with us. Starting and completing tasks, formulations of goals, all this is real typical. And some of the physical effects and changes that we see a lot of seizures at Vinland. We do have a nursing staff that's there, but it's not a hospital-based program. So, the nursing's there during the day and up until like 10 o'clock at night. And then we've got health service technicians overnight. So, but we do see a lot of seizures and balance issues. I think I'll hit this a little later in the presentation, but the two top things you can do to help someone heal from a TBI, number one is sleep. Number two is physical exercise. It has been proven that the neurons will start to reconnect with both of those things in place. A lot of mainstream treatment centers don't allow for sleep because, we got 30 something hours. We got to do a programming according to the state. We got to get this in, you got to show up. And what they really do need is sleep. And I think, that's probably for all people in recovery. I'm not a clinician though, so I'm not going to go there, but sleep is super needed for those with TBI. So at Vinland, if you come and take a tour, you're going to see, before I knock on a room, I'm like, staff, and I'm opening it up because it doesn't matter what time of day, there may be somebody in there that really does need to rest. And that counselor said, absolutely, you go, you just take care of you. So sleep is needed. Some of the psychological effects are listed here. There's a true lack of foresight, of course, bad decision-making, and reasoning, verbal and nonverbal. Linear thought process is tough. So we get a lot of, and what's the difference between not being able to focus and ADHD? Sure, it's all kind of mixed in together, but these are clearly symptoms of somebody that might have a TBI. So some of the other consequences of this disability is, listed here, but I think that disinhibition, decreasing impulse control is big. That altered self-image is huge. We'll see a lot of folks that, somebody was just telling me yesterday, you guys will know better than I, they're prescribed as, it's like some alternative personality disorder of some sort. I don't know the technical term, but we see a lot of that apparently. And it's people that are coming in and believing that like, hey, I used to be, all that in a bag of chips. And, I used to have, women chasing after me, right? You've heard it. I mean, we hear from everybody that's in recovery, but this in particular with TBIs, you have a real disconnect between reality and what's happening. I'm the biggest gangbanger on my block, yet, I can't remember my last name, so you have to really kind of dig down a little bit more, but altered self-image is huge with our folks. And then of course, memory is a huge one. So adopting treatment techniques. We do this so that we can successfully treat the client and not just, get them through. They need to understand what's required. They need to be able to act appropriately and understand behavioral concerns that may be had. And so the TBI education really is as important to this client as is the drug and alcohol education, because so many of them will believe I drink and drug because I cannot cope. So teaching those coping skills are going to be huge in helping this person get well. So, we really, sometimes we'll get people that we can't admit because they won't be able to get anything out of it. They won't be able to understand what's happening in the room. Their memory is so bad that they cannot remember from moment to moment. That would probably not be a person that, it'd be wrong for us to take the money, because we wouldn't be helping them. So we do have a couple of different processes that we go through that are very specific to the applicant. And I think I included in there the Vinland medical screening form. Many of you might remember back in the day, we used to have something called the physical and comprehensive evaluation. I think it was they physically had to go to a doctor, get a physical, and then that was part of the application. And how many of our clients can go to a doctor, so we stopped that, and we just got this one form now for everybody to fill out, and it really is for the referent to fill out with the client, because what clients will tend to do is just kind of go through and go yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, because they don't like to write. They don't like to, do all that. But this, if you can help fill it out, it really, really helps the client. You advocate for the client. And it's important to know what medications are they supposed to be on? What medications were they, subscribed or prescribed and they don't take? Who are their support systems? All these kind of things. If you're diabetic, how are you managing that? Are you managing it? All that kind of stuff. So anyway, so I'm kind of going off on a little tangent here, but I think that it all ties in. We want to treat everybody, but sometimes we can't. And so we have to set them up for success with us. And so that's where we will see some folks that we have to move along to more of a group home environment or something a little more intense. Some things that we can do is not overwhelming the client. Unlike this presentation, but verbal and written repetition is really useful. Getting them to practice new skills is huge. And then these are little notes that we've taken that really, really help our clinicians say really help. So, always summarize your statements to check their comprehension. Ask them to present their own summary statements. Encourage note-taking, particularly if a client is going into an important meeting with an attorney, with somebody from the law, if
Child protective.
yes,
services.
Absolutely. Have them bring a notebook, supply them with a notebook and a pen if you can. If they don't write and they can't write, really encourage them to see if they can bring in a recording device. I don't know if they'll let it happen, but they can ask and say, look, I've got this disability. I really need to be able to remember this. These are huge assets to the clients. I think also us being aware of our vocabulary in the field is important because, this field has so many acronyms that we catch ourselves in our intake, our admissions process, saying, do you have a TBI? And the client's like, what's a TBI? Do you have a traumatic brain injury? Have you had any concussions? Just really kind of breaking it down and not referring to it as SUD treatment. They're not going to know what that is, that's really helpful for our clients. So again, date books, calendars to record appointments and schedules, notebook for that important information and notes from even groups and counseling sessions, Post-its, visual cues. We go over information guidelines and expectations very often, and we're very, very specific. And that giving concrete suggestions and examples was something that I did when I got off the phone, and I approached Paul and said, when you do this, this is the effect it has. And I know you probably don't mean to do that. So how can we do it another way? If you're angry, how can we redirect this a little bit? Or how can we, help you solve the problem and do it quietly so we're not upsetting other people? Just being very concrete is really important with TBIs. This is a significant grief and loss group. These are folks that have lost so many things: their identity, their loss of power and control, their loss of their future, relationships, and spiritual confusion and crisis. I mean, God abandoned me when he took my significant other and our 2 children in that car accident, and I'm alive, we hear this all the time in any treatment center, but it's particularly acute with this particular population. So grief and loss work is big, and you really need to have someone on staff that is very familiar with PTSD as well, because these folks have a lot of it, and it needs to be addressed in treatment. And then, of course, isolation related to all the above. What appears to be denial in TBI clients may be lack of self-awareness caused by the brain injury, and round we go. It's really amazing how much that happens. So you need somebody that's got some ability and some background to be able to kind of pull that apart for the client. The extra rest here, not a manipulation to avoid responsibilities. And, your clients will forget to sign in, sign out in their appointments. And so anything we can do to help them will be very helpful. Okay, so we talked about that. There's that little thing I was trying to go after. So yeah, we specialize in TBI. So what that means is all of our front-facing people are CBIS certified, Certified Brain Injury Specialists. It's hard. Trust me, I have a master's degree. And I couldn't do it. It's rough. So, you have to have some good training in order to really help the client get past some of these issues. So if you can have somebody on staff to go for the Certified Brain Injury Specialist training, that would be awesome. Boy, every treatment center could use that. And certainly within the prisons. But so anyway, we do say you don't have to have a brain injury, but Asperger's, autism, fetal alcohol syndrome, fetal alcohol effect, and serious persistent mental illness are something that we deal with. Again, we've got a full mental health wing. So we've got in our treatment center, we don't call them counselors, we call them case managers, because from the minute the person walks in, they're trying to do wraparound services from the time they leave, and they can stay up to 90 days. We've got somebody there right now, 126 days, because we can't place them. But, you know, they're really working on all of that. You know, do they need a caddy waiver? You know, what else do they need? So you've got your case manager, and then you've got your mental health professionals. So they've got a couple different places they can go to, which is nice. And I wanted to get over to the place where we're talking about, because I think we're going to run out of time here quick. Yeah, so as you can see, most of people are from state of Minnesota, but this is cool. We had an outpatient at Courage Center before my time, but that was super cool. We had an outpatient going there, and then they sold and this and that, but pretty cool. Number 1 issue, we treated substance abuse. Number 2, mental illness. Number 3, brain injury. Interesting to see all these others that come up for us. All right, we got client profiles. I don't really have time to go over it, but basically we serve everybody from the lawyers to the gangbangers. You know, we work with most insurances, and we do have supportive housing, and I think I have a handout for that in there. I don't really promote this much because it's permanent. It's in Crystal, Minnesota. If you have questions, you can certainly call. But it's permanent housing. They have to have a cognitive issue in order to get in there, and some of our complementary care. But I wanted to talk real quickly about this, our therapeutic exercise program. It's what we're known for. We had 2 guys come over from the Minneapolis Clinic of Neurology, and they created this program just for us because they were working with so many people with brain injuries, and they saw the effect that therapeutic exercise would have, and they saw the healing of the brains. And they came over and they stayed, and they both had 20 years each and over there. And so they're just amazing guys. Anyway, they get more thank you cards than like any of our clinicians, because, you know, they changed their life. Of course, they didn't go through the hard part of, like, you know, working through family trauma, you know, but Jeff and Tom, you're the best. You changed my life. So it's just wonderful. It's a mandatory part of the program, 1 hour per day. They have to be in the gym, and they're working one-on-one with either Tom or Jeff. And this is not, I want to be Mr. and Miss America. This is, I want to get full range of motion on my neck back. I want to be able to, you know, balance again and get rid of this walker. People literally walk in with walkers and walk out without them. It's amazing. And it has been proven, we did some report on it that it was well before my time, but it came out average 33% reduction in chronic pain levels just through the therapeutic exercise. No pills, people. So, I mean, it's phenomenal. And I think it also helps the clients when they see the changes happening. They're like, oh my God, the rest of the program must work too. And so then we get buy-in, you know, doing the hard work, you know, the hard emotional work. It's a wonderful part of the program, and we can't say enough. And then we get them, we give them a certificate when they leave. It's like a prescription of some sort that says, you know, you have to go and continue your therapeutic exercise, and this is your list. And the YMCA will oftentimes give them complimentary memberships, which is super cool.
Way cool.
So again, just lower place on psychology and psychiatry, dual diagnosis, accommodations for all. And this is the Living Works Lodges that are in Crystal that I was telling you about. It's amazing. We do have openings every once in a blue moon, but we have to be very careful who we bring in there. This is not a place for somebody to flop. This is 2-3 years. We've got one guy that's been there 15 years because he's a paraplegic and his parents died, and we're going to keep him because he needs to be someplace. But usually people need help, like, how do I work? How do I get a bus? How do I get a resume printed? And we've got an LADC that works there Monday through Friday, but it's independent living. Evenings and weekends, they're on their own. So we got to be really careful. And then these are just some of the resources I wanted to throw at you guys. If you haven't heard of the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance, they're amazing human beings, nonprofit. They are wonderful. They do a lot of advocacy. They do a lot of education. Some great podcasts on CTE that's happening within the football field and military, and neuropsych testing we do at Vinland. We use Carroll Neuropsych in Edina. But there's the ACE. Right there at the bottom is the link for that PDF that is the one-page assessment that you could use in any intake to indicate whether somebody's got a brain injury. So, questions?
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Woo.
I can set that for you.
You can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question, or you can type something in. We've got a few minutes left. There's a lot of information.
Did everybody go to lunch?
Well, I had a question. Given the prevalence of the co-occurrence of I'm losing my track. How do we brain injury and SUD at the same time? How can we help inform providers who don't have the specialty in TBI? I mean, there's this. We're doing some of that now, but how it feels like you said, everybody should have an expert in TBI on staff.
Yeah.
And so how do we change that or encourage that?
That's where the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance comes in. They offer CEU events at their location in Roseville on almost a weekly basis, I believe. And it's open to caregivers, it's open to people in the community, it's open to professionals to get trained on some of this. And then that is where you find out how you can go about becoming a certified brain injury specialist. It's a course that you can take online. It is run by, someone out of Washington, DC. I mean, it's kind of intense, but it's worth it. It is so worth it. And they have all the connections for you to be able to, get up to speed. And if nothing else, just sending staff, to go and or having them come in and give more specific information, like what's a coup, contra coup effect. So all of that can be super, super helpful. That is the first place I would start, is Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance. They're amazing.
Anybody come up with one?
Yeah. Do you see a correlation between TBI and a specific substance?
Oh, interesting. Well, yes and no. I mean, alcohol is still number one. Meth seems to be number two that we're treating at Vinland. But, no, because bad decision-making happens on all drugs and alcohol, but it's an interesting question. But no, you can fall and hit your head and, get in fights, just from regular old alcohol. So no, not necessarily.
How about when you were talking chicken egg thing?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, if you have, especially a woman who might be living with substance use disorder, who ends up in a violent relationship or experiences some kind of sexual exploitation. Again, is it treating the trauma of the violence, or is it the substance use opened a door to a possibility of violence?
Yeah, I know. Which came first, the chicken and egg? We don't know. But we do know that when we're treating that client, we have to be able to identify whether we're dealing with somebody that has a TBI. Because if we don't identify that, then all the other work that we're doing around trauma and all that, they may not be able to get. So if we're able to identify that, hey, because of the domestic abuse, or because there may be a TBI, and these are some of the effects that you could have because of it, let me know if you do. Let me know if you, what did you see after that incident happened? And being able to do that, then you're going to recognize, okay, they're going to need a lot more slower information. They may not process well in a group. They may need just a lot of one-on-one. And it's very simple. We can all help them. We don't need to be CBIS specialists, but we need to know that we're working with that. Otherwise, we're going way over their head.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other questions? I'm going to wrap things up here quickly. I think your contact information is in all of the handouts. So if you have further questions or want to know more about Vinland or TBI resources, please feel free to contact Molly.
And one of our clinicians is speaking for you guys in January?
No, I think it's March.
Sorry, March. Tom Beckers is one of our lead clinicians. He's amazing. He's given a 2.5, 3 hour on us.
So that's going to be, it's one of our Friday forums that's coming up. And so we will send out the Friday forum information along with the evaluation survey that will go to all of you in your inbox, in your emails. The last question on that evaluation is, I want the CE verification, so be sure you check that box, and then we'll email you your certificate. We do have a Friday forum tomorrow, and we're full in person, but we have lots of room to sign in via Zoom. And the topic is Safe Harbor and Pride.
Breaking free.
Breaking free.
and
Thank you.
Pride.
Sorry, got it wrong. Breaking free and Pride. That's a 2-hour continuing education approved event. Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to make sure. Oh, and we won't be having any more echoes this month. It gets too close to the holidays and people coming and going. So the next time we meet will be January 16th. And we do have a Friday forum in January, eating for recovery, and looking at co-occurring conditions with eating disorders and substance use disorder. And I think it's going to be a really good program. We're using some of these, some of the tools that will be shared at Wayside, and they're finding them to be very helpful. So we're going to bring everyone in and share all that information. So at this point, we're right at the top of the hour. I'm going to say thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the month and celebrations of family and holidays for those of you who do that. And
Waving from the distance.
yes, and we'll see you in the new year, I hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy holidays.